out something that's going to get you tonight. Let's talk about the thing that's going to get you tonight. Welcome to the Happy Harvest Horror
Show. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Corrie.
And I'm Brian, and this is the Happy Harvest Horror Show, where we get together and talk about all things spooky, creepy, ooky, and all the little kooky Addams Family. And we
need an addition. I mean, don't get me wrong, I adore our theme song. Our theme song's amazing. Shouts out Brendan. Our theme song's fantastic. But it would be cool to have an additional theme song that is a play on the Addams Family, because you always do that.
Is it public domain yet? It's been out forever, right?
That's a good question. I feel like it should be, but
whoever has the rights to that song, man, maybe the Addams Family. They probably have the rights.
The actual Addams Family. And then we'd have to pay the Addams Family royalties for every episode.
Just have to pay them in like dead rats and like poison, you know.
I love it.
Very on brand for them. That's their currency. Well, we got a pretty intense topic to talk about today.
Sure do.
But before we get into that, Corrie, it's been a few weeks since we've recorded. How spooky have your weeks been?
So I'm going to keep it short because, as you said, we have a big topic today. But I watched, like 2 nights ago, I watched a movie on Netflix, which is like big. It's like in the top 10 right now. And, you know, I didn't care for it that much. But
Tell me about it.
Have you watched What Lies Below?
Lies Below. No, I've never seen it.
It's been like number 2, 3, 4 on the like Netflix top 10, which, to be fair,
Did it just come out?
Yeah, it just came out. It has, what's her name? The actress who was in American Beauty, Mina Suvari.
Okay.
And it was actually really weird because I had a moment just like a week ago where I thought about her out of nowhere. I was like, what happened to her?
The universe was prepping you. Yeah.
And then she pops up in this horror flick on Netflix. But yeah, the top 10 on Netflix is a weird thing because
it's just top 10 people watching it. You know, it doesn't mean like it's great. It's like.
But so much of it, I feel like, is really not good a lot of the time. Like, and also a lot of it is stuff I'm not interested in watching. Like, it's a weird top 10 Netflix. Like,
right. I agree.
It's rarely my go-to, but sometimes you're just like, okay, fuck it. So it's this horror movie, What Lies Below, and conceptually, I didn't hate it. Like, it is. To use one of your favorite words, it's kind of Lovecraftian. it's monstery horror.
Yeah.
It's like man from the sea type horror, which is
aquatic horror.
Yes.
There you go.
Which is I'm down for that. That's definitely in my wheelhouse. Horror. Where this movie kind of failed. It actually, for a second when I was watching it, I thought it might have been the same movie that you talked about on one of our recent episodes where you said you really loved the setup and then it just was
Come
terrible.
True is what I was talking about.
Yeah. I was like, wait, is this that movie? Because it had a very similar vibe where like I was like into it and then you had weird shit with like an older man and like some weird sexual shit with an underage girl. And where it made me really mad is because this movie, the girl in question, like she was a teenager in the film, like 16. Yeah. And she easily could have been like a freshman in college. Like she easily could have been of age and it would not have changed a single thing in the entire film.
But in the script they made her
underage. I was like, really? Like you could have, I mean, it's still a questionable territory, but I'm just saying like you could have made her an adult, like, and yet, and it would not have changed a single thing in the film and they didn't. And it made me frustrating.
And that because this was the thing with Come True too, because I've been reading a lot of reviews about this, and very few people bring it up, and that makes me like, what, guys? Because this was the opposite in that one. Was the actress? She's like 23, but she looks like she's 15. It's like plays in this film, and it wasn't a plot point about their relationship being a thing. It was like played off romantically in the movie, and that's what made me like go, oh, you guys are like thinking you're selling this as it's nice, but it shouldn't.
To be fair about this film, they don't sell it as nice. Like it's definitely made clear that it's not okay at one point, and it took a little while to get there. So for a while I was like, hold on, and then it kind of got there, and it was like, okay. I still think they could have made the girl 18, and because in the plot line she like comes home from a summer camp, and like it's her mom and her mom's new boyfriend, right?
Sure.
Easily could be coming home for the summer from college, right? Like there's just, you can, and it wouldn't have changed anything. But then like I was like into the concept, I was into the tension and the weirdness, and basically the last like 5 minutes are just insane, and it gets really like torture-y out of nowhere, which isn't really my vibe to begin with, but also it doesn't even feel in line with the rest of the movie. So it was just like it just got nuts in like the last 5 to 10 minutes, and you're just like, what the fuck just happened? Like
sometimes I love that, but
I know it's not getting super good reviews, so I'm kind of like,
I just was on Letterboxd and it's not doing great, but
yeah,
got a fun poster though.
I don't know that I recommend it, but also whatever. Like,
yeah, you watched it, and others can watch it too.
Exactly. So I guess that was my big horror moment in the past handful of days or whatever.
I love that you're watching. You're seeking out horror movies. Good.
Yes.
Thumbs up.
I just want everyone watching horror all the time.
And nothing but,
What a world we would live in if all of our content was just horror.
Honestly, it'd be better. We'd all be in therapy. Thankfully, that would be our therapy. We all walk out and go, I feel better. Wow, you're right.
That's an interesting concept for like an alternate society though, like where maybe it's like utopian and we all just like live in peace because we get all of our kind of dark impulses out through the content that we watch. Yeah, interesting. That could be a concept for something.
Horror fans are the nicest people you meet.
It's true.
They're chill.
It's like,
true. We left it all in the field. It's all in the movie.
Left it all in the court.
Coach, we're good to go. Put us in. We've seen it.
How spooky was your week?
Very spooky. I think we'll have to cover the stuff I've been talking about over a few weeks because it's been a few. We recorded like 3 episodes in like a week, and we've been going back through. So since then, I went on a Scream marathon. Watched 2, watched 3.
Oh, nice. I love that.
Scream 2 was much more fun than I remember. Scream 3 was not as good as I remember. So take that for what you will. I think you could just watch Freddy Krueger New Nightmare, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I think it's the same movie as Scream 3.
Interesting.
Yeah, they do the same meta thing. I just think New Nightmare is much better. What else? I've been still going through it because I can't find 4 streaming, but I've been going through all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies because there are many. I didn't realize there were this many. Kind of like the Leprechaun movies. There's a lot of them. 8 of them. I watched them all.
I think I've only ever seen like one of them, honestly.
TCM. I saw the first one's art. It's amazing. I watched the second one. The second one's bonkers. And I had the thought while watching it, and I texted a friend because I know Rob Zombie always says that for his movies that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is his favorite, is like his biggest inspiration.
I do love Rob Zombie.
He thinks the first one is his biggest inspiration. And I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and I'm like, no, dude, this is this is basically your House of a Thousand Corpses.
Is your inspiration.
This is your inspiration. Like, I'm looking at your movies and I'm telling you the sequel is the one because this movie is exactly like House of a Thousand Corpses. And then I watched 3. 3 was strange, but had a young Viggo Mortensen as part of the family. And I can't find 4. which stars a young Matthew McConaughey.
I love Matthew McConaughey.
And Renee Zellweger too. Like, so
oh
I really
my God. Is it a rom-com? What is this?
It's called Texas Chainsaw: The Next Generation, and it's the fourth one. And it was the fourth one before they did the reboot in 2003, with the Michael Bay produced one.
Yeah.
And then
need to see that. I need Matthew McConaughey Texas Chainsaw Massacre in my life.
I'm looking for it. So I feel like I have to I'm going to have to rent it, but I think it'll be worth renting.
Yeah. Like, I'm so intrigued by that. I need to see that.
I can't wait. So I got that one. And then I got, the remake, the beginning, and then Texas Chainsaw. And then I'll be ready to go for the new one coming out next year. There's a reboot coming in. That's which is your favorite. It's a legacy sequel. It's a sequel to the first one that skips everything else. But I think great. And I got more stuff I could. I guess real quick. I've been reading the Hannibal Lecter books. So I finished Silence of the Lambs. Nice. Great book. Jesus, it's like the movie is such a loyal adaptation. I didn't realize it's like shot for shot. It's really good. And now I'm reading a book called The Remaking. Came out 2 years ago, I think. Very in line with our topic of today, like witch trial sort of thing. Devil Scare.
Devil Scare. I like
Scare. That. Yeah, it's all about like this witch and her daughter. Spooky devil, like an urban legend of like this witch and her daughter that were burned in the woods, and then like this, flash forward to the future, the present day, where a young filmmaker is making a movie based off of it, and it's happening again. Like, I guess I think it's hinting at some reincarnation stuff.
Ooh.
I don't know. I'm like 40 pages in, so I could be wrong, but it's so far pretty good. And so that's quickly what I've been up to. Some spooky stuff.
Very nice. Very nice. That was good. You just wrapped it all up real quick. That was a lot
of spooky movies, some spooky books. Having a spooky good time over here in April. Love it. Spooky
good time. All right, let's do a quick shout out to our lovely, lovely supporters.
Yes.
Because we love you and we appreciate you. And we're so glad that you're here. Also, we hit 10,000 downloads today, which was just a fun little moment.
10,002.
10,002. 10K, baby.
10K. Love to see it.
Thank you for listening, everyone. We really, really appreciate you. And thank you to our supporters, Julia, Jody, Erica, Wendy, Morgan, Jennifer, Jody, and Aaron. We really appreciate y'all. If you would like to become a supporter of Happy Harvest Horror Show, head over to anchor.fm/HHHS/support. They make it super easy for you to just pop in your information, and you can throw a couple of bucks our way every month, and that helps us make this content, and we really appreciate it. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. And yeah, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we are going to talk Satanic Panic. We've returned. Hello, everyone.
Welcome back. We missed you.
Also, if you're listening to this audio, it's also on YouTube. So
it's also a video.
Yeah, you can come look at our faces. We have pretty good faces. I like our faces.
Yeah, pretty good.
They're pretty good. They're not bad. So
not too spooky, but they're pretty good.
Yeah. The vibe isn't the spookiest. Brian's definitely got me beat on that front.
Oh, my room is spooky.
Yeah, you've got the spooky look, and mine isn't the spookiest, but that's okay. Okay, so today we are talking about a topic that is vast and complex and timely as hell.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Super unfortunately. So let's kind of start let's start with like a fun way. Let's start with like a fun way into this conversation.
If we got a fun plate of Satanic Panic, would you have some? Well, I know you would have
fun
some.
way to like bring us in. If you've been paying attention to what's hot in the culture right now, it's pretty hard to have missed Lil Nas X and Montero Call Me by Your Name.
Oh, what a bop, dude.
Oh, it's so good.
Love it.
It's so good. It's so good. The video is so brilliant. The whole thing's so brilliant. Like, personally, 100% stan Lil Nas X and everything he's done with his life in recent weeks.
Happy Harvest Horror Show approved.
100%.
Video, song, shoes, Twitter presence, love it all.
All
love
of it.
it all.
All of it's been immaculate. Like, I'm just also just so impressed with how he has dealt with everything, how he handles the internet. He is just a force in this world.
ready to
He's a
go.
magic being. And I am grateful to have been
Thank you.
blessed by his creation. So Lil Nas X came out with Montero Call Me by Your Name. It's amazing. And the video features it's Satan imagery, particularly the big moment. Lil Nas X rides a stripper pole down to hell.
It's
Amazing. and he gives Satan a lap dance, which is also hot as fuck.
Amen.
And then he snaps Satan's neck and he like takes the horns of Satan and becomes the king of hell. So just, I mean, everything.
As is tradition, you know?
Yeah. He just checks all the boxes.
Got it.
And though the world has kind of been a storm about it.
They reacted to it.
People reacted.
People had thoughts about it. A lot of great thoughts. I mean, just like every tweet he has about it is like millions of likes, you know, like he's huge. And what he does with it, this attention is so good. He designed these Nike devil shoes, Satan shoes, which look great. You know, I wouldn't wear them, but like, hell yeah, you know, they're good. And they're like vials of blood that are
yes, that is the most metal
amazing
shit. I
Nike
love that
had
so
to come
much.
out and say, no, it's not our shoes. You know, like many Christians hate this. They hated these shoes that they're happening. And so then he released another pair of shoes just to appease them, and they're Chick-fil-A shoes. Oh my God, it's so funny.
Yeah, no, he very much, even though I know all of this attention and stuff it must be unbelievable to deal with. And he has also had a difficult time with it to some degree. He's handled it better than anyone I could ever imagine. You know, like he's just handled it so well, and he really knows how to just kind of troll people back. And
That's great.
It's
great.
It's just fantastic. Like one of the tweets I saw that was like my favorite right after it came out, like literally like hours after it came out, he tweeted and it was like, I better get some Illuminati conspiracy theory videos out of this. I worked so hard.
I worked so hard. I want you to pick this apart.
And I love it too, because like I've actually been following Lil Nas X for a while. Like I follow him on TikTok, and he's that's always been his vibe before this music video. He's just he kind of just faces that, you know, weird hate and conspiracy theory stuff head on. And I've seen stuff on his TikTok before any of this where people were trying to make connections with him and the Illuminati. And and the way he handles it is just amazing. And like, so I know that helped inspire what he went on to create, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like he basically took all these conspiracy minded attacks and was like, oh, okay, like, well, we're gonna have some fun. And then also I think that, you know, the bigger message, which is so important, is this video is a beautiful expression of him kind of expressing as a gay man, like what a lot of, you know, less progressive fundamentalist Christians have told him his whole life, which is that he's going to hell. So he basically was like, all right, fuck y'all, I'm going. And then you're mad at him like for going.
Yeah, he did what you told him to do, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's so much surrounding this video. There's so much that's so powerful about it. So many people have been excited about it, and I think really empowered by it, which is just beautiful and wonderful, and I love it. But yeah, a lot of people angry, and a lot of people I think are using it to dig deeper into some complicated beliefs they may have about Satan's role in our day-to-day lives.
Or the our soul of a nation, you know, as a nation, which is in jeopardy.
Yes, our collective soul, our individual souls. A lot
Waiting
of
to get
people
it.
have taken this to mean something, and this also, staying in the contemporary lens, is very, very, very much connected to QAnon.
What's that?
I'll tell you. I actually know a lot about QAnon at this point. I've spent a lot of time digging into this. I've watched the whole HBO documentary at this point, which is great. A lot of people have criticized it because they feel like the documentarian was like gamifying this very, very harmful conspiracy theory, which I will be completely like, QAnon is incredibly harmful. It's not good. It's
bad.
It's very bad. It is incredibly harmful, and it is rooted in layers and layers of hate. And I also will state, a lot of people don't know that. Like there are lots of people caught up in QAnon that do not know the layers of hate that it's rooted in, and that's why it gets so complicated.
I think it's about asking questions, you know, getting to the root, asking, you know, like what do they not want you to know?
Yeah,
red pill.
Fucking
but
they
brought in the Matrix metaphors. I was like, guys.
The Matrix metaphors are insane to me, because it's like they don't realize that the Matrix was literally written about like the transgender experience, like literally, like that's the metaphor of the Matrix.
Yeah, that's a side topic, but that's going to be really fascinating to hear. You know, in like 20, 30 years, film studies classes are going to look at that movie as like a...
Yeah. So anyways, we're not going to go too deep down into QAnon, but it is very much connected to the subject of Satanic Panic. So I want to try and connect to these things in a clear way for those of you who maybe don't know that much about it. Because even just like, I was watching some videos about QAnon the other day, and my mom walked in and she overheard, and they were talking about like satanic blood drinking cabal. And my mom was like, what is that? And I was like, oh, it's QAnon. And she was like, taken aback, and I was like, you don't know about QAnon? She's like, no, I do, but like she had no idea that that's what it actually was. So I think a lot of people have heard about QAnon.
Yeah,
I think, and they're just like, oh, this is like this weird alt-right Trump thing, which it is.
This is what I thought it was before. Yep.
But they don't actually know what this group of people believes, which is such a valuable part of the story. I mean, at this point, if statistically it is possible that there is someone listening to this podcast who is involved in QAnon, the likelihood I don't think is super strong, but it is possible. But the likelihood that someone listening to this podcast knows someone involved in QAnon is like 100%.
Pretty high.
It's like,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like 100%. So like, even if it all seems weird to you, I promise you're probably connected to someone that is entrenched in this in some way, and that's scary. And that's complicated, and so it is important that we actually understand what this is, and that we're not just dismissing it as like whack jobs, you know, like, because that's happening a lot too. People are just dismissing it.
Sure.
And it's like, no, you should take the time to understand this, because it's actually a pretty big thing. But anyways, before we get away from that, I watched the HBO documentary. I think it's very well done. It got a lot of criticism because some people who know a lot about QAnon wanted more about what we actually do about the people who are in QAnon. And that's fair. But I think that needs to be a new documentary. I think that's like, because this documentary, the goal from the very beginning, from when he started out, was to find who Q is. And Q is the person that has been dropping all of these very cryptic messages on 8chan and later 8kun. And then people started latching on to these messages and pulling their own messages from
connecting their own dots, making their own conclusions, running very far with it.
Yes, but Q was always anonymous. No one knew who Q was. So the point of the HBO documentary from right out the gate, which it starts years ago, like the footage starts from years ago, right out the gate, he wanted to find who the person behind Q was. And I think he did that. I 100% think he did that. And the unfortunate thing is, at this point, so many people are so entrenched in it that it's just not enough for them. Like, it's just not enough for them. So we do need another documentary that's like, okay, how do we handle this moving forward? That needs to be the next step for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you're interested in QAnon, you can watch the HBO documentary. There's also a lot of good, like Vice has done some really good stuff. Oh, one of my favorite TikTok accounts did a huge series on QAnon, and it's at TOFOLOGY. And she does a lot of really good TikToks on conspiracy theories. And she does like a huge series on QAnon where she kind of just breaks down elements of it. So like people can actually understand both what it is and also the really problematic historical things that it's rooted in. So check that out for sure. But I say all of this and bring all of this up because QAnon is 10,000% the current day version of Satanic Panic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's connected to Satanic Panic, as in Satanic Panic is the term that is typically used specifically for the mass hysteria that occurred in the 1980s. That being said, there have been several cultural mass hysterias over time, like Salem witch hunts, like just so many.
The Inquisition.
Yes, yeah.
That really fun time.
Exactly.
Gosh, what a riot, right?
So these like religious mass hysterias, there's so many of them. However, Satanic Panic is typically the term used for what occurred in the 1980s.
Yeah.
So that is what we are focusing on in this episode because it is like the most recent that we experienced. It was also very like American. It was very America focused.
Very tied to the American nuclear family fear, of like, it's just at risk.
American ethos, American politics, all of that. And QAnon is a new version. It's definitely new, but so many intersections with Satanic Panic. So we're gonna dive in to
take a walk down 40 years ago?
Something like that. 30, 40. Yeah.
Remember how crazy shit got.
For real. Also, we're not going to go deep into what Satanism at large is because the Satanic Panic was based on hysteria and is
nothing to do with.
Not based on what actual practitioners of Satanism believe. Neither of us identify as Satanists, but Satanism is not, I'll just say Satanism is not built on violence. It is not built on a lot of these things that people think it's built on. Satanic Panic is built on a hysteria of what people think Satanism is, which
has never really ever matched up to what it actually was.
Exactly. So let's get into the Satanic Panic of the 1980s.
So it's good to start off with just kind of setting the stage a bit, right? Because in set the scene, okay? We got a lot of things that converged all at once, right? We had no small amount we've talked about in the show, but there's a little movie called The Exorcist that came out. in the 70s that was a huge hit. I watched a whole video today, just like of old news footage of the opening weeks of the movie. Lines down the street, people fainting in the audience, news reporters talking, to patrons that came out crying, they were throwing up, like it was a huge, like, what's happening in this movie? What the fuck? Why do people want to go to it,
For
but
real.
It was a huge hit. And it was followed up, 3 years later with The Omen, which was another Catholic nightmare, that like it also depicted a young boy or young child in cahoots with the devil, whereas Regan in The Exorcist was possessed by a demon. Damien in The Omen was the Antichrist, but these are two instances of demonic activity using children.
Also, I feel like I just thought of this, but we got to give shouts out to Rosemary's Baby too.
Oh, totally. Yeah. That which preceded that even too. Another dealing with babies.
Babies and the devil, and
babies, always his in that, it was his baby. We don't remember that, I mean, not great how the pregnancy happened. We can talk about that, like Satan, but
Satan, you need to step back.
But as far as a paternal figure, it was him. Anyway, it's also worth mentioning when we get into talking about this craze in the 80s that before the 1970s, child abuse and child, sexual abuse allegations were never publicly taken seriously, at least not to the degree of when we got into the 80s in a very conservative era that they started. The Department of Justice really revamped the laws around reporting it. There was a huge push on child pornography that they made a big push to eliminate.
All great things.
All great things. Thumbs up. This was all happening at the same time as a case that came about that kind of started with this book, which was called Michelle Remembers. Do you know about that? When you were doing research, did you find stuff about this?
Oh yeah, I've listened to a lot about it. I mean, part of me is like, I need to read this book, but I feel like I've heard pretty much everything I need to hear. Also, if after this podcast, you just want like all the gritty details, there is a great podcast called Cults that did a 5-part series on the Satanic Panic of the 1980s. Yeah, and totally. There is an episode where they go into great detail about Michelle Remembers and so many other elements. So if after listening to this episode, you're like, I need more information, I want to know how all these things played out, head to that podcast. It is very well done, very well produced, super informative.
Even further reading, I got a lot of this today because just in time, New York Times did a whole article about this on the 21st.
Really?
This year. Yeah. Called "It's Time to Revisit the Satanic Panic." And I'm like,
it sure is.
Sure is. It's a great time because it's happening.
It's like the perfect time because it's happening.
So yeah, this article from the Times I thought was a really great primer of just kind of it really concisely goes through a lot of these big points that we're going to cover today. But this book, Michelle Remembers, it was published in 1980, and it introduced readers to a cast of murderous Canadian Satanists. It landed on a powder keg of American Anxieties. I'm quoting the Times right now, by the way. And what it was a book about a Canadian psychologist and his former patient, and it was written autobiographical. And it was about her memories of a child abuse at the hands of Satanists when she was younger. And although its lurid claims were quickly challenged, doesn't matter. The book was a bestseller. Everyone was reading this book about, these horrible memories that she suddenly remembered as a.
And that's such an important thing to keep in mind around anything, is that when you have mass amounts of people that believe something is true, it's really hard to come back from that.
It's out of the bag.
It's really hard. Like at that point, the collective notion, the collective knowledge is that this happened, that this is true. And it is so hard to break free of something like that.
Right. So now the stage is set. We're cracking down on child abuse. Great.
Big fans.
Big fans. It's in the mainstream zeitgeist of fear of the devil, and this book came out, huge bestseller.
Wow. Talk about just a 1-2-3 punch.
1-2-3 punch, which all landed over 7 years in this McMartin preschool trial, which was a mess.
Yes. So the McMartin preschool trial is a huge mess. Before we dive into that, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the more playful aspects of everything that went down, because I think
there's nothing playful about what we're about to talk about.
Yeah, because it gets real dark. So we're
Yeah.
going to start with like the elements that are things that honestly you've probably heard of or like
let's get these out of the way.
With your consciousness in some way. And then we're going to shift into when it gets like not good. Thank you for setting the scene, Brian. I think that like kind of really shows how several different factors that are seemingly disconnected can really create an entire movement in a lot of ways. There was a very common element of Satanic Panic, which was the idea that family-friendly corporations were actually in service of Satan.
Oh, yeah.
And this, I mean, instantly I was like, Pizzagate, anyone? Like, so We're seeing it again with QAnon, like, we're going after family-friendly corporations, which, there's also plenty of reasons to go after corporations, but this isn't one of them. But there were these rumors in the late 70s, early 80s that 20 to 50% of McDonald's profits were going to just Satanism, like at large.
Jesus, what a cut of the pie, like
McDonald's, like one of the biggest corporations in American history. 20 to 50% of their money was just going to Satanism as like,
and the IRS was like, Satanism. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
They reported it. Can't do a thing about it.
That's tax deductible. And it all started as a rumor, and it basically just
always does.
It started as this very this rumor that was not based in reality, that was then disseminated among several church pamphlets, and then it just got bigger and bigger.
You gotta love those church pamphlets.
Still to this day, there is no proof that McDonald's has ever given a dime to Satanism. I mean, I don't think McDonald's gives a shit about Satanism. I think they're just making their money on burgers and calling it good. And then another one, Procter and Gamble, which is like a big, like house, like daily needs, like soaps and things like that company. Sure. The 13 stars in their logo were supposedly the mark of the devil, which this is important because you will see a lot of thinking like this in cult-like hysteria conspiracy theories.
Saw it in episode 1 of the QAnon thing.
100%. It's huge in QAnon. QAnon is pretty much an endless game in meaning making that has quite literally been built on very, very cryptic messages. And the more mysterious and cryptic a message, the easier it is to create a meaning that serves your belief.
And then you can say I was right.
Exactly. And this is Procter & Gamble. There's 13 stars in their logo, which I don't think had any meaning. I think they just wanted stars in their logo because it's like a night sky with, I think, like a moon or something. But for whatever reason, that belief took hold with people that was the mark of the devil. So they believed that company was involved. Children's programming was attacked as promoting the message of the devil. So the show Thundercats,
love it,
was attacked for, quote, promoting Eastern mysticism, which straight out, Eastern mysticism has nothing to do with the devil.
Yeah, you gotta stay consistent if you're gonna.
But this also goes back to when you have that worldview, and this is definitely not how I feel about all people. Like, this is not how I feel about Christianity at large, because I know people who are Christians who have an incredibly open mind and are more just like, Jesus Christ was a cool guy, which is like, cool, like, sure. But there is a lot of fundamentalist Christianity that cannot be okay with belief systems outside of what they believe. And this is kind of an example of that, right? So they're trying to find Satan, the devil, and everything. So if you have something that represents Eastern mysticism, well, that's different. That's a different cultural belief. So that's also the devil, right?
That is the other, and I hate it.
Exactly. And that's such a huge thing with all of this too. In my other podcast, in Art History Babes, we've done a whole episode on the devil, which we will also, I'm sure, do over here. But we did an episode on the devil, and we go pretty far into how the devil, throughout all of history, Satan, has been used as, or typically represents the other, represents people that exist outside the norm, right? Which, going back to the beginning of this episode, Lil Nas X, right? Like, he's making a statement about his experience as being gay and how people have treated him because of that. And he uses the devil symbolism and imagery to help represent that experience, which is something you see throughout art history. You see it, the devil often represents the other. The devil often represents, doesn't represent evil, honestly. The devil often represents people that have been, for some reason, tossed aside by society. And that's such an important thing to remember, because I feel like this is Thundercats is promoting Eastern mysticism. Not even the devil, but Eastern mysticism doesn't fall in line with that super fundamentalist Christian view. Therefore, it is part of this grand Satanist thing that's going on.
Satan's busy. He's got a lot of departments. Okay, he's got a lot of pull and many different theologies,
Yeah.
Guy.
This one is hilarious, and I only just learned today. Apparently, some people believed that the Smurfs were part of this grand conspiracy because they were believed to represent the undead because they were blue.
Oh, because they can't be, they're dead. Okay.
They were blue in color, which means they are not living, which means they are the undead, which means they are soldiers of Satan.
Yes. I'd love to see just an army of Smurfs that doing the devil's bidding.
Count me in, dude. Like, that sounds great.
That's Gremlins.
Truly.
We already saw
That's Gremlins is what that is. Another big one. Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of people feel some type of way about Dungeons and Dragons. And I've never played Dungeons and Dragons.
I've tried a few different times. Scheduling is tough. That's all I gotta say about that. I never got too far.
Fascinating. And people get so into it, and I'm like, yeah, this is a thing. Like, it seems very interesting. I've never played, but I'd totally be down sometime. Anyways, in the 80s, not only was Dungeons and Dragons huge, but it was very easy to kind of manipulate the mystical imagery to feed the Satanic Panic. I don't even feel like that needs to be
corrupting our children's minds to serve the devil.
Anything mysterious, mystical, that doesn't fall in line with that fundamentalist Christian ideology, it is Satan.
Yeah.
And
they also got it in music. The big thing in music.
Huge in music. So this I got really excited about because there was this whole thing with playing music backwards. And it's actually called backmasking, what is the technical name for it. But there was this huge thing with rock music, playing it backwards. It was giving you messages from the devil. And I fucking tried this shit when I was in middle school. And I was in middle school in 2000. So this is long after this went down, but I totally listened to Led Zeppelin backwards. And it sounds creepy as hell. But it's just because of the music played backwards.
Anything backwards sounds creepy as hell,
Exactly. It's
Taylor Swift backwards probably sounds
terrifying. And it does. It sounds super creepy, but you're not actually getting messages there. And if you are, you're pulling them out, which you can do. Like that's a trick of perception, right? Like you can kind of pull a message out of anything.
Right.
But there is not an actual message implanted in them. But this got crazy too, because Led Zeppelin was one of the big ones. Like you got to listen to Led Zeppelin backwards. Judas Priest was a huge one. So much so that at one point, a younger gentleman and his friend, I don't remember exactly how old they were. I think they were like teenagers, and obviously had stuff going on, mental health issues, and they made a suicide pact, and one of them succeeded. And that's super tragic and awful. And the family obviously in mourning, grieving, super tragic and awful, but they blamed the music of Judas Priest for causing this because it was kind of wrapped up in this like bigger cultural ideology, so much so that they tried to sue the band Judas Priest for like millions of dollars. It did not work.
I don't imagine it did.
Yeah, and it shouldn't. That's not on Judas Priest. It's awful, but it's not on a band who also did not put subliminal messaging in their music. You can just find weird shit if you're looking for weird shit. Like if that, like that's my like one, I always come back to that in life. Like if you're looking for weird shit, you can always find weird shit. Like it's always there if you're looking for it, because it's all about perception. And so, this is it's an awful situation. It's awful that those boys felt that was the path they needed to go down. And like, but it wasn't the band's fault. It wasn't because there was subliminal messaging in this music, but that just fueled the fire of, right? Like there's evil messages in this evil rock music, which that took off.
Totally. Because what? Evil rock music's fucking rad, It's so good. And they just can't take it. They
can't handle it. They can't handle how good it is.
And as a funny reversal, it started off as rock was the devil. They hate Elvis Presley and his hips. They hate Judas Priest and fucking Zeppelin and Kiss, and it's all fucking
Ozzy Osbourne.
But then you fast forward like 30 years, and suddenly we got rock and roll mass.
Right?
And it's great. and just like we knew you were gonna do it. You fucking you do this every time. We got fucking thousands of years of proof, and you just did it again, and they can't keep getting away with it.
You do this every time. Fucking rock and roll mass.
We just missed Easter, which was last week, right?
Yeah.
We went over to Wells's parents' house, and we drove by a rock and roll kind of mass church. Great. And they had a big sign over there, service thing that just said "Death Defeated." just like a, we got him,
rock and roll. Easter. We got him.
And I've just been laughing about it for a week. I love it.
Jesus. Literally.
Literally.
Okay, but so I mean, these are the elements I think you hear related to Satanic Panic a lot. Listening to rock and roll music backwards. All these kind of just weird little elements of culture that people would overanalyze and connect to the devil. However, it's all fun and games until human beings literally go to jail for this bullshit.
Yep.
And then we don't talk about it enough. It makes me mad. It literally like makes my blood boil that we don't talk about this shit enough. People's lives have been torn apart from bullshit like this. And we just ignore it. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. We're going to get into how many innocent people were caught in the fray of Satanic Panic. And ended up in prisons for years and years of their lives.
Yep.
Because it's fucked up.
It's fucked up.
McMartin preschool trial. Let's start.
So
now.
I hope this even further painted the backdrop of what we were going through in the 80s. You know, like we're scared of it everywhere, you know? So it didn't seem too freaky. I mean, it was very freaky, but it didn't seem too far-fetched, unfortunately, to too many people. That when in 1983, a woman by the name of Judy Johnson, mother of one of the Manhattan Beach, California preschools, young students, reported to the police that her son had been sodomized by her estranged husband and by McMartin teacher Ray Bucky. In addition, she also made several more accusations, including that people at the daycare had sexual encounters with animals, that Ray flew in the air. A lot of things were happening, like satanic ritual abuse is the term that was coined around a lot of the cases that came out from this.
Another term that's interesting that I just kind of discovered is like ritualized crime. I'm like, that is an interesting term. Like there's a lot to break down there.
So that accusation happens. Ray Bucky is arrested. Things are happening. I couldn't believe this when I read that. This part is where things get like sped up quick. The cops, the police, in response to this accusation, sent out a form letter to about 200 parents of students at the McMartin school, stating that their children might have been abused and asking the parents to ask their children to question the children about this. And I mean, I'm quoting from the actual letter that was said. Records indicate that your child has been or is currently a student at the preschool. We are asking your assistance in the continuing investigation. Please question your child to see if he or she has been witness to any crime or if he or she has been the victim. Our investigations indicate that possible criminal acts include oral sex, fondling of genitals, buttock or chest area, sodomy, possibly committed under the pretense of taking the child's temperature. And it goes on to just list all these other, horrible situations that your child might have been a part of at this school. And I mean, I can't believe that this was to 200. And then it has the gall at the end of it to say, we ask you, please keep this investigation strictly confidential because of the nature of the charges and this highly emotional effect it may have on our community. I'm like, yeah, no shit. So maybe you shouldn't just email blast it out to 200 parents, you know? This really sped it up pretty quick.
Yeah. And to be fair, like imagine being a parent in that situation.
And getting that letter. Horrifying.
And being filled with all of that imagery and those ideas. Yeah, absolutely horrifying.
Yeah. So I don't blame parents for being
terrified,
freaking out.
Yeah.
I would freak out.
I would be too.
There are ways to handle this case. And it went the wrong way every step of the way. Including this one. This was a big hold up. Before we even get into the trial, we'll talk about what came of it. The woman, Judy Johnson, who made the accusation, was diagnosed and hospitalized for acute paranoid schizophrenia. And in 1986, 3 years after the accusation and years before the trial ended, she was found dead at her home for complications of chronic alcoholism. So she was
kind of having a rough go of things. Oh, the
prosecution asserted that Johnson's mental illness was caused by the events of the trial. Johnson had admitted to them that she was mentally ill beforehand. Evidence of Johnson's mental illness were withheld from the defense for 3 years, and when provided was in the form of sanitized reports that excluded Johnson's statements at the order of the prosecution. So again, not great. You held back for 3 years that this was made by a paranoid schizophrenic, that this is, again, it's not going great. But this was all because there's like a perfect storm that was happening, right? We had the district attorney at the case was losing an election that year. Big court case was probably going to boost his numbers. You had, the prosecution withholding evidence. You had the numerous media newspapers covering it that were painting the picture basically to sell papers. I mean, this is sensationalized. This is huge.
Oh yeah,
And there were
definitely.
many conflict of interest later on that we found out about this. The accusations themselves that were taken seriously were, and that the media did not like really rebuke until years after the case was. And by the way, this case lasted 7 years. It's the longest case in U.S. criminal justice history. And it ended with no convictions. No one was found guilty of anything. But Ray Buckey was in jail for 5 years because of it. Some of the accusations were described as bizarre. I would agree. There were overlapping accusations of satanic ritual abuse. It was alleged that in addition to being sexually abused, they saw witches fly. They traveled in a hot air balloon and were taken through tunnels. Tunnels. This is a big one because they cite this a lot, that under the preschool, they were taken through these like spooky tunnels, perform these rituals. They saw animals killed, all that. There was no tunnels under it. There was like foundation from a previous form of the building. They went through garbage and found that there was nothing that was dated past like 1940 that was in there. So no one was down there. But this whole building, McMartin Preschool, has been leveled since then. They have like fully
probably good to clear that energy.
No, I agree. But I mean, like this trial, they didn't just like search it. They like fucking to the underneath the foundations were looking for evidence of this happening. Again, longest case. This was feeding into it. The author of Michelle Remembers, written by Michelle Smith. She was credited as being a pivotal part in the investigations and the interviews of the children.
Yeah, she was considered approached as like an expert on the whole thing, and where all of that gets just really super complicated is obviously, like Michelle Remembers, is based on the psychological concept of repression of memories and bringing up past repressed memories. That is not an okay practice. It's harmful, and it also is not in any way reliable. But it was something we did for many years. We like, especially in child abuse cases, it was a practice to try and bring up memories that people had. And the human brain and human memory is a fickle thing, and it is not reliable in that sense. And it's super dangerous to dive into in a clinical therapeutic setting. So it's not something that is considered an okay thing to practice anymore. And that's kind of what this whole case was built on, right?
Right, exactly. But that was not the case then, because at that point, the book was a huge success. And
everyone loved it. They're like, repressed memories. Let's talk about them. Yeah.
How much did they love it? I'll tell you how much they loved it. On the basis of the book's success, Pastor developed a high media profile, gave lectures and training on satanic ritual abuse to law enforcement, and by September of 1990 had acted as a consultant on more than 1,000 satanic ritual abuse cases, including the McMartin preschool trial.
This is what makes like me furious inside, is you just have all of these people in positions of power creating a reality and creating a narrative and training people because they're experts, and all of it's bullshit. Like, it's all bullshit. Yes, the writer of
Michelle Remembers.
Yeah, the writer of Michelle Remembers, like, it's bullshit. Like, and yet, yeah, we had people in positions of power, police enforcement, church authorities, whatever, that were speaking from a place of expertise that it was all real. So you can't blame people for believing them, you know?
Yeah. You're someone in authority.
Exactly. And
who else would I go to? Yeah.
Exactly. And that also, I mean, just connects to how authority is a scam. With the McMartin preschool case, it was very much built on all these testimonials of these hundreds of children who were brought in after that wonderful letter that their parents received. And the thing was, it's been since proven that a lot of the techniques used to interview those children were highly inappropriate and were coercive. They are not techniques that would stand up in a court of law now.
Yep.
And many children who were interviewed, who are now adults, have admitted, like, I made that up. I lied. I was a kid. I was just telling them what they wanted to hear.
Yeah. There's a few different ones I saw that are like, they were basically quoted saying that, like, yeah, if I didn't give them an answer that they wanted, they would ask me again. And say,
that's what they did.
That's what they would do.
It's textbook coercive interrogation. Yep. And you can't do that with anyone, but you really can't do that with children. Yeah. Children don't want to be in that situation. And so they're just trying to tell you what you want to hear. Like, they're just trying to, like, be comfortable and make you happy because you're the adult. It's like, you're not going to get any reasonable information out of a child in a situation like that. So exactly. Yeah, just all around bad technique, bad information. And it led to, as you said, Ray Bucky being in prison for 5 years. Like, that's a human being being imprisoned innocently for 5 years.
And it also, because this is a very serious topic that we're talking about.
Oh,
child
totally.
abuse. This is crazy serious. And like I said at the beginning, that at the beginning of the 80s, there was a newfound focus on this, Department of Justice. However, this like super fascination and like obsession with satanic ritual abuse probably did obscure real child abuse issues, because satanic ritual abuse was now at the top of this is the pinnacle. This is what you report, and everything else is, there is a hierarchy to what's bad. And so this is really fucked things up. There is a quote I got from Wikipedia that said, in England, the satanic ritual abuse panic diverted resources and attention from proven abuse cases. This resulted in a hierarchy of abuse in which SRA, satanic ritual abuse, was the most serious form, physical and sexual abuse being minimized and or marginalized, and mere physical abuse no longer worthy of intervention. So this is, if nothing else, I hope anyone listening takes this away from this episode, because this is exactly what's going on with QAnon. People are using all of their energy and are wrapped up in it because they believe that they are saving children and helping children that are victims of sex trafficking. And sex trafficking is a very real thing, and it is a very real problem. Yep.
And it is a very real problem that involves children at times. And it's a horrific, awful thing. And we should do everything we can to bring it to an end. But what has happened with QAnon, like, there were times this summer where actual resources surrounding sex trafficking were being inundated with QAnon bullshit, that all of their energy and resources were going to, like, trying to, like, manage that. And so they couldn't actually do the work that they're supposed to do. And that's the hardest thing, is like,
yeah,
if you care about sex trafficking or child trafficking, that's amazing. Like, yes, care about that. We should all care about that. We should do shit about it. QAnon's not the way, though. Like, you should actually get involved in real
programs,
organizations, and programs that are doing this work. Exactly.
Reform and yep.
And it has, from social media to the internet, it has just diverted so much energy and so much attention from a real issue that deserves attention and deserves energy. And that is why it's so fucking sad. And that's exactly what happened with Satanic Panic. It's the exact same thing. It's history repeating itself. It's the exact same thing. It's like, child abuse is real. Yes, we're not pretending it's not, but it's not part of this big overarching weird satanic cult. Like, that's not it. It's just fucked up humans doing fucked up shit. And like, that is what we need to focus on. And we need to, like, fix that. And we need to save those children, not the made up children that you have created in your head that are victims of satanic ritual abuse.
Or subjecting these children to all, this is probably lifelong trauma that they had to test,
Totally. Some of them have spoken about that.
Yeah, you've created trauma for them. You've done it now. You're doing child abuse.
You did it.
You did it.
Yeah. No, some of the adults that were part of this as children have spoken about that, have spoken about how it created trauma for them. And it's like, yeah, of course it did. Like,
of course it did. I mean, that's another thing too, that like, just like with the satanic ritual abuse, when criticism finally did come and the media was very skeptical about it, another sad thing about it is that suddenly now social workers that were, their whole credibility was also lost as a profession for
yes.
a while, that this is like, oh no, but you were the ones doing the investigated and all that. Like, no, we were okay. Like
it's a mess, man. It's like it affected a lot of people in a lot of ways. In addition to I don't know too much about this case, but in addition to the McMartin preschool trial, there's also another separate case in Texas.
The West Memphis 3.
No, not that one. We'll get there.
That's not Texas.
That's Memphis. This was a separate case in Texas. Dan and Fran Keller, who I believe owned like a daycare center, also served 22 years in prison as the result of accusations of serving blood to kids in a daycare and just other terrible acts of ritual abuse. They were later exonerated for it. 22 years.
It's a quarter of your life.
22 years. Like, and so all of this, all of the playing Led Zeppelin backwards and Dungeons and Dragons and McDonald's, like it had real effects on people's lives.
Yep.
And it's so important to remember that and think about that now because we're dealing with something similar now. Another huge case. This is actually the one I probably know the most about. West Memphis 3, man. The West Memphis 3. So this one is fascinating. It is. There's so much on it. There really is like so much you can dive
including
into.
A 3-part documentary called Paradise Lost from the director of Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows.
Dude, when you told me that, like, I'm not gonna lie, I, like, lost my fucking mind. Like, I love that so much because if you listen to our Blair Witch episode, I like lose it because that director, you said also did Cecil Hotel. I'm in love with this director.
It's becoming 7 degrees of Blair Witch 2, that like I can connect anything to Blair Witch Project.
I love that this person is connected to all of these. Like I'm enthralled. I love this person. I love this director. Like I'm so intrigued for so many reasons. But anyways, Paradise Lost 3-part documentary. Highly recommend it. Very well done. And it's very well known too. It's up there on the list of just legit documentaries over the years. And basically the tale of the West Memphis 3, it is a gritty, gory, ugly tale. And we're not going to get into all the details here, but a trio of young men were accused of murdering a trio of young boys as a part of a cult ritual. And the murder that occurred is awful. That's honestly makes the documentary pretty hard to watch, in my opinion, The actual murder that occurred is just fucking awful. However, the story got a lot even bigger from the horrific murder because over the years, a lot of people kind of got behind the fact that these boys were wrongly accused of it. Mm-hmm. And the West Memphis 3 were basically just like teen guys that were into like heavy metal music and like
which police loved.
Yep.
Obsessed over that fact.
Yes, they did. And they were into occultist shit. They were into like Aleister Crowley and stuff, but like
Aleister Crowley.
in the midst of the Satanic Panic, being into occultist shit means, oh, well, that you just dug your own grave, basically.
That's
like
it. Over.
you admitted to being a Satanist who kills people. Like that's what you did by just being interested in these things, which actually have nothing to do with committing violence against people. But yeah, it was enough. It was enough for prosecutors. It was enough for the police. It was enough for a lot of the media. These boys were into heavy metal music and had a cult interest, so they must have killed these children. They must have done it. Damien Eccles, who is one of the young men, was sentenced to death row and solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, which is the most inhumane sentence you can give to a human being.
That'll really mess with you.
Yeah, it's also just personal belief. I don't think that is a okay sentence to give to anyone, even if they are guilty. Yeah. That is incredibly inhumane, but that's what he was sentenced to. He was in jail from 1994 to 2011.
Wow. 17 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
And a lot of it, he was in solitary confinement. He is an amazing person because he went through all of that and was eventually set free because they never had evidence that he actually committed this. And in fact, I think if you watch the documentaries, there's lots of evidence that someone else, a clear suspect, actually committed it, which makes it even worse. Like, it's like there is so much more evidence for someone else having done it, but we kept our focus on these boys and their heavy metal music. And so he served a lot of time, a lot of solitary confinement. He also was just like brutally physically attacked in prison, because that's what happens to people who are accused of doing awful things to children. Right. So he underwent a lot of physical trauma in prison, and he's out now. He actually lives in Salem, Massachusetts.
Heyo!
He's around. Like, you can find him on a lot of stuff. He's currently an artist and a practitioner of ceremonial magic. And he talks about how jail was like a gift because he was able and forced to dive so deep into his spiritual practice, which is honestly, I think, the most beautiful view you can take coming out of a situation like that. Like, I can't imagine having that kind of strength.
Best case scenario, kind of.
Yeah, like, I can't imagine, like, he would have every right to be so angry, like, yeah. But he really just dived deep into spirituality and magic, and now you can find him a lot. There is a wonderful episode of the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, which is one of my favorite podcasts that he is on. And that episode is actually turned into one of the episodes for the Midnight Gospel, which is one of my favorite shows. It's on Netflix. You all should watch it. Midnight Gospel. It's basically a fusion of Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast meets Pendleton Ward of Adventure Time. They came together,
trippy animations,
made the most trippy animation, but like very out there spiritual show. I fucking love it. I'm a huge fan, but there's a great episode where Damien Eccles is the guest. In Midnight Gospel, he's like a fish man. And he's like talking about like magic and spirituality, but it's such a tale. And I really recommend looking deeper into it. Watch the documentary, watch Paradise Lost, look into Damien Eccles. There's just been a lot of public support. A lot of people truly, truly believe he is not guilty. And his life was undeniably altered by this mentality, this satanic panic, this idea that you have certain interests, you are into heavy metal music, you are into the occult, you must have committed this awful atrocity. It had to have been you.
And how quick it was for just anyone to just right away believe it. It's like, that would happen. There's we have all these other different, examples, but their talk show television was huge at this time, which also served as just like kind of amateur sensationalized investigations.
I mean, even like Oprah, and like I got love for Oprah, but like Oprah.
You see this video with Oprah?
I think I have seen it, but
there's this video where she has like a member of the Church of Satan or a Satanist on, and he's talking about his role and that he served in the military, and the military is fine because the military was, like just trying to. And then a person from the audience says that, "Hi, I'm so and so. I was a member for your chapter in Chicago, and I had to leave because I was part of a ritual murder where I watched someone being stabbed 7 times and all this." And Oprah was like, sadly pretty credulous of tell us more about this, and putting like the Satanist on trial of like, well, how do you think about this? Like, what do you have to say about that? Like, I'm like, this is a pretty big accusation that like you fucking killed somebody from, yeah, I'm just hearing I got a quick question. I killed somebody and, and he starts asking questions and he's like, oh, well, I have suffered from amnesia about that. And I'm like, guys, wait, but we're still believing the guy,
yeah.
And so
it was a weird time, dude.
And so like it's insane watching that in a time capsule way of watching the audience and Oprah and like everyone like listen to this really fucking nuts accusation. And I think everyone in the room probably knows it's nuts, but it doesn't matter because it's a vehicle to like, okay, good. Somebody said it first. Now we can hate them, Yeah.
And it's like disappointing because like I also saw like Geraldo Rivera mentioned and shit. And I'm like, I expect that shit from him, know?
Yeah, he had like a bunch of priests on. He interviewed Ozzy Osbourne on it. Years later, he apologized for the whole fucking charade, but that was decades later, like... When it was,
love Ozzy so much. I do want to mention because this is important to mention, and they go in depth in this in that 5-part cults podcast. There were cases in this time frame of, and they're few and far between. They're very isolated, but there were cases of fucked up people doing fucked up shit in the name of Satan.
Oh, sure.
But they were rare. They were quite isolated, either individual, like what's his face, the fucking serial killer,
the Night Stalker.
Yep. Yeah. He liked to say his shit was about Satan. There's a few stories of like either it was like, one person or maybe just like a small group of like fucked up friends that did some awful shit and like inexcusable, and then they would attach it to that meaning to Satanism, and honestly they probably knew exactly what they were doing.
That's like the entire plot of Scream 2.
Yeah. So it's
murder
just
is like, I'm just gonna blame it on movies.
And this was for Satan, whatever. But so I don't want, the reason I bring that up is because I don't want to make it seem like no one has ever killed someone in the name of Satan. That has happened. It has happened, and it's awful. It's fucking awful. Like, but it is not a part of some grand cabal. It is not a part of some grand conspiracy, apparently funded by McDonald's. It is not a part, and it is not a part of contemporary Satanists. Yeah. Like, we've met Satanists. Like, they're chill people. Like, they're not, it's not a space for hurting people. It's more of a space for exploring what it means to be outside of like the norms of religion or the norms of society. But yeah, so there are cases where that happened and it sucks, but that is not evidence that all of the liberal elites are drinking children's blood, like,
or Hillary Clinton's eating children in a pizza shop.
She doesn't have time for that.
Just look at it logistically. She just doesn't have the time.
I'm not like the biggest Hillary fan, but she's not doing that. I promise.
I'm not doing that.
That's not what she's doing. We can criticize her for other reasons, but
not that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, this is there's I'm sure hundreds of books about this. It's a comet.
There's so much.
Movies are made about this, documentaries. This is a huge thing that happens, repercussions, and it's slowly happening again. So it feels like a pretty timely and topical time to like say, like, you know, we're as a human civilization, we're not great about learning from mistakes. We're pretty good at just repeating them, even though
you just said the most infuriating thing about being a historian. Like when I became a historian, when I like went down that path, I was like, this is infuriating. People do not learn. Like
we've got an entire internet right here.
People do not learn. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like how many times do we have to go through this lesson, you know? And I will say, even though it is very much happening right now, I do feel like the vibe around the current Satanic Panic is different than the 80s.
Sure.
Because like what we saw with Lil Nas X, like there's been so much popular support of him, right? So I feel like pop culture is kind of airing on the side of Satan a little bit more.
But I mean, that was the case. Because obviously it was much more heightened in the 80s because we were in the time of Christian conservatism. That was very hot, you know, then, right? But I mean, The Exorcist sold out everywhere. People fucking loved it, you know? Hair metal rock, that was like big, very popular. People loved it, you know, that like Dungeons Dragons, this all, you know, I feel like it's now more than, I think even then more than now, Satan and devil imagery was much more popular than now. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, it's kind of a cool thing, you know? But like as far as mainstream imagery, that's what I would make the argument.
Think I agree. I don't disagree. I think though at the time it was more of a symbol of like rebellion. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Whereas now it's just like, oh, fucking Lil Nas X is like hanging out with Satan, dope. You know, like, and it's like not even pop culturally. We're just like cool, you know, and that I think is kind of.
I'm seeing it
pop
more
culture acceptance that I'm sensing feels different because when you have the kind of subculture being like, this is our rebellion, it just fuels the war, right?
Sure.
It fuels the fire. But when you have pop culture just being like, chill, cool, like it's not quite that same like rebellious thing. It's just like, it is what it is. It's a symbol. It's art. It means what it means, and you should all chill out a little.
No,
bit,
you've just touched on something that I see. I agree that I think it's now seen more as we brought it up earlier, the soul of the nation or whatever. That like people, and I've seen on you know these Facebook things that family members that are like, you know, they have the same quote about the end times, that when good is seen as bad and bad is seen as good, that's this time when, you know, the day of reckoning is coming. So that's what I think was happening more now. It's like, yeah, mainstream is real chill with it, you know, like we love it, you know.
But that's a sign of the end times.
Big fan, you know. WAP, awesome, you know, that like
amazing,
we love it. But and so for these
but the thing is, like, you know, from our perspective, it's not a sign of the end times. It's just a sign of progression and being accepting of people and their many dimensions, and that can be hard for some people.
Yep. But
that is such an important idea too, that the end times, the cultural soul that is at, you know, that people feel they need to save. Once again, speaking as someone in the space of a historian, like people have been preaching the end times since the beginning of people. And
it's just stubborn. Don't fucking come.
And people have been attaching their own meanings to that, but like if that is the narrative you've latched onto, I just have to say it's not new. It's been going on for definitely as long as there's been Christianity, but before that, like narratives of apocalyptic ideology thinking the world's going to end. It is a tale as old as humanity. And
as old as time.
yeah. And to be fair, someday it is all going to end. It is because that's just how life works. It's in a cycle, but
Circle of life. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to end at the fiery hands of Satan. I think it's going to end because it's time for it to end. So maybe just relax a little bit.
Yeah. Just chill.
I
Chill
have
and
one
listen
message for QAnon.
My message is like chill and
Relax.
be calm and call me by your name, you know? And there you go.
Just, we're here for a good time, not a long time.
That's it.
And as going back to the beginning of this entire podcast, and ghost hunting's a part of it, but also apparently Satanic Panic is a part of it.
Sadly. You know, as a button to this, it's funny that I didn't mention this at the beginning of this talk, but a couple of years ago, I went to the Satanic Temple, did a screening in New York of Haxan, which is an old, basically, witch film that was like how to pick out a witch in a crowd, and these are the history of witch trials and all that.
So you pick out a witch.
How you pick out a witch. And it was part of it was a 3-part sort of evening. We watched the movie. We were also it was a black mass where they did a mass and talked about just politics. And then they had a full presentation on the Satanic Panic where they talked a lot about these things here that we're talking about now, but they went into more detail. But I just wanted to point out that at the very end of this talk that is that a black mass a couple years ago and it's chill. It's fine.
It was chill. Yeah, and there's
pretty cool movie.
We touched on it, but just to kind of reiterate, you cannot separate these things from political context. They're all tied up in politics.
Sure.
80s, it was tied up in politics. QAnon, it's tied up in politics now. It's all tied up in political ideology and political weight and what people want to happen with political power, which you should always be critical of. Always, 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 always. Watch the HBO QAnon doc because that will take you on a journey of where this information is actually coming from and its attachment to certain ideologies. But also, maybe just to kind of wrap things up and also on a fun note, I don't know if we've even really mentioned this to our listeners before, but you and I visited the Satanic Temple in Salem together.
Yeah, it's cool.
And we took a dope ass picture in it as well, which I'm going to post on Instagram. But
cool.
It is cool. It's just a cool space. Lots of art, lots of different kinds of art. And the people, I even remember the person who took my ticket was just I just got the best energy from them. They were so lovely and just cool. And they were dressed super cool. And they were just very welcoming. And I was I will live here. I will live here at the Satanic Temple.
Yeah, it was cool. There's some really cool art. They had the Baphomet statue there. Took some pictures with. Right next to the Baphomet statue, they had one of Degas' dancer sketches, which
why not?
Nuts. Where are you going to find Degas? Oh, right there. Funny. It's funny how art.
Yeah, and it's just it's a cool space, and any research I've done into the satanic community in terms of contemporary Satanic Temple, all just really cool people that are basically just fighting for openness of religion in America and openness of belief in America and
fighting against the sort of exclusivity of just Christian doctrine in America.
Yeah,
that's very much prevalent. It's fighting with keeping the playing field leveled, and they do a lot of really, really cool stunts to show the hypocrisy that exists.
It's in my opinion, it's very much a political organization.
Sure,
really is. They do a lot of political work,
but they've made some
really baller moves. They've done some really cool shit. So if you don't know anything about them, you should look into them. We will do an episode on them for sure. But there's a really great documentary. I don't know if it's still on Hulu. It might.
It was for a while. I don't know, but it's called Hail Satan ?
Question mark. Very much recommend. I think that was my first deep dive into being like, this is what contemporary Satanism is about, and it's dope. It's so good. So if that's something you're just like, oh, I don't know anything about that, look into it. They're mostly just like kind of a political organization that is trying to, as you said, level the playing field, because we live in a nation that claims to support religious freedom, but is very much based on Christianity. It's like religious freedom as long as you're a Christian.
Yeah, is the subtitle there.
So that's, in the contemporary context, that's really what most Satanists are doing. They're trying to create a more even climate in a socio-political sense. And they're definitely not drinking the blood of children. So
no, saw no children blood when we were there.
I didn't even see a child. I didn't see.
Yeah, no,
I just
no children.
saw some other people looking at art. It was a very chill experience.
They had some really cool mugs. I almost bought one. Pretty expensive.
Good merch from the Satanic.
Good merch, some t-shirts.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously lots of complicated information here, and not a topic we will stop talking about, because to be honest, it's just something I'm very passionate about. And I think it's something that no matter where you are on the spectrum of like religion or whatever, like you should just think critically about, because as we described, people's lives are affected by this. People's lives are at stake, and we should really make sure that we're not using religious bias to imprison people, to harm people, to make political decisions. Like, there's just so much. There's so much. So hope you enjoyed this conversation. This was a good one.
It's an important one. It's a lot of not fun stuff to talk about, but it wasn't a fun time. So
it is fun to listen to Zeppelin backwards. I gotta admit, that's fun.
That's the thing. I've been talking to my roommates. Like, man, I know we're about to go through another Satanic Panic, but like, think about all the dope music we're about to get. Like some real good music.
It's starting up, man.
It's starting up.
X, I love you.
Right off the bat. Here we go.
But thank you all for listening. We love you. We appreciate you. Obviously, this being a complicated, more like complex topic, like we'd love to hear feedback. This is honestly this is like my bread and butter. I like getting deep into shit like this. So if you have further thoughts or further information or whatever, please email us at happyharvesthorrorshow@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube. Please, if you're new to all this information, check out all those resources we gave you. Please, 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 because I just think it's an important thing for people to be informed about. So learn about QAnon, learn about Satanic Panic, learn about these things, and
go forth, my children.
Yeah, go forth and stay spooky, because ultimately being spooky is counterculture, and that's fucking metal. So
fucking punk, it's metal, it's all of it.
It's punk, it's metal.
Listen, it's cool. You want to be cool, right?
Yes, you do. And until next time, we'll
stay spooky.
Stay spooky. Yeah. Stay spooky and, fight fascism.
Man. Bye.
Bye.